Hello, everybody. It's an absolute honor to be back again speaking here at the Opioid Summit. The last time that I was here, I shared a talk based off of stigmas and language-based stigmas, to be very exact. And this talk that I have for today, wrapped around harm reduction, is very similar. And harm reduction it can be a very difficult topic to talk about. When I wrote this talk, I put it together not intentionally to be a presentation for a group of providers like this. I put it together for community outreach and engagement initiatives, where I go into communities and talk about new treatment methodologies that are coming into our care networks, like medicated assisted treatment programs, where individuals are not completely comfortable with Suboxone or other MAT substances, where we're trading one drug for another. That education forefront can be pretty difficult. But when I present this information or this topic, and it's a pretty provoking title, The Zero Death Dilemma. I like to focus in on the stigmas around harm reduction that we face as providers. And to set a little bit of expectations here, you guys heard my experience, my background. I do not come with a clinical background. I'm not here to talk about the pros and cons of any aspects of harm reduction or expansive treatment methodologies. It's not my place. I'm purely an external market guy. I'm out in the field coming and visiting people like you all every day to help advocate and align treatment and access services for those in need. But I'm part of dialogues with providers, with families, with individuals seeking treatment services every day, and the dialogue's wrapped around the treatment service options that are available to them. And as the providers that are engaged in that patient's case, you start seeing trends of opinions appearing to what people believe is an appropriate plan of care for each individual. That happened last time I talked, if you were here for it. Okay. So if you remember the last time, if you were here with us, I like to present themes before I get into my talk for us to keep in mind as we go through the content. And the themes for this talk that I want you to just keep in the back of your mind is that when it comes to harm reduction or the expansion of treatment methodologies, we as providers at times can disagree pretty strongly. The next theme is that if we all aim to give the most patient-centric care as possible, if we realize that every patient's set of circumstances are unique to themselves, and the needs in the treatment plan needs to be unique for their needs in their life circumstances, then the more that we expand our treatment service offerings, the more patient-centric care is enabled. And then lastly, with the expansion of treatment services, just from a concept, alignment and access to treatment services broadens. What you couldn't once access, now you can. I wouldn't go into a program because they didn't offer a certain subset of services that fit my needs today. Now they do. I'm willing to engage. So access naturally broadens. So does participation. And again, this talk is more about the reference point of, as we as providers, sometimes we struggle with new expansions of treatment methodologies there's a stigma behind what you believe is morally correct and ethically appropriate for treatment. But your neighbor down the street may have a whole different treatment model with proven outcomes. It's saving lives. And yet, you wouldn't send somebody who's failing your program into theirs to give it a try because you don't agree with it. And in that type of scenario is what this talk goes into. It challenges our own perspectives as providers to identify, do we have our own self-belief systems that restrict the possibility of the expansion of treatment services that we offer? Does that make sense? When I give talks, I typically root them all out of personal lived experiences. When I was here the last time talking about provider language-based stigmas and how they can detract entry into our services, how it can further influence the growth of stigmas, I talked about how I would put together collateral and use it to spread the word about how and when to access our services with other providers across multiple states, and they would have problems with the words that I use. I gave examples of what happened to me through my dialogues as I went across. This talk here is rooted off of a life experience that I want to take you guys through, just like I did in my last talk. About 11 years ago, prior to my entry coming into behavioral health, I was traveling somewhere in the Midwest. I was in a hotel room. It's in the morning. I'm following up on emails, reports, and I don't know if everybody else is like me. I got to have some background noise going, so I have like the local news on. And you're not paying attention to it, but our brains do funny things. We're paying attention to it subconsciously in case something comes on that starts capturing your attention. And this news segment that I'm going to share with you guys came on, and it caught my attention a quarter way, full way, to the point it had me in my feels. And this news segment talks about a program that was being started and rolled out through New York. And it was the first time I was ever introduced to a harm reduction program regarding addiction services and care. So what I want us to do to help me cue up today's conversation and dialogue is I want to show this to you guys so you can have the same experience that I have and give us a level playing ground, okay? I broke this segment into two parts. First, about 10 seconds, it plays the aspect of the first part of the news segment where they describe the program that's rolling out. And then the second part, it talks a little bit more about the overview of the program and the whys. So while we're watching this, I want you guys to have your own personal journey of, does it make you happy or mad that they're doing this? Would you support them doing this in your community or not? Are you for this or are you against this? Do you like it? Do you not? And if you want to share it publicly that, hey, oh no, or yay, whatever, you can. Or you can keep it private, it's fine. I just want you to have this experience before we get into this talk. So with that, let's start with the first segment.
We're getting an inside look at a controversial approach to the nation's drug epidemic, which has taken more than 100,000 lives in the past year. Overdose prevention centers like this give addicts space to use illegal drugs more safely, with trained staff standing by to help if they overdose.
Now, they were talking a little fast there. So let me recap it. So there's this group in New York that opened up a clinic that allows people to walk in off the streets with their illegal drugs and gives them a safe harbor place to use them with paid supervision. How does that make you feel? Are you for this? Are you against this? My reaction to this was, I was shocked. I mean, near disgusted. Like, how could somebody come up with a way to further encourage people who are using drugs to safe harbor them and while doing more of it? Like, how many more social service programs can we spend our tax dollars on to continue to ruin America? Right? That was my reaction to this. But as the segment continued to go, I'm going to tell you, I got in my feelings a little further. So let's go.
Hiding in an alley alone, hiding in the bathroom alone, if they overdose, no one's there. You get to respond immediately. And those are key moments, because those are moments where some people will say, this is it.
You're the safety net.
Definitely the safety net in the moment while they're in their use.
That safety net is saving lives. On average, more than 2,000 people in New York City die from drug overdoses each year. In just the first 5 months of operation, the two centers intervened 283 times without a single death.
And there it is. It's the dilemma. The zero death dilemma. So this group in New York opened up this clinic where people could come in and use drugs. They foresaw the need. There is a death epidemic due to opioid use. People are using by themselves. If they had a place where they could come and not be by themselves in the back of an alley or shooting up alone in a bathroom stall with nobody there in case they overdose. These individuals, they know that this is dangerous behavior. They know that fentanyl is being laced in all the products they're buying that they think is heroin, and it's not, and it's dangerous. And so by opening up this place, these individuals will come in to seek the support and the encouragement and the safe harbor. And the outcomes of this program, there was estimated 2,000 deaths in New York City in a year. Divide that by 12 months. That's 166 deaths a month. This program was open for the first 5 months. Within those first 5 months, they counteracted 283 overdoses. That's 283 lives they saved. But within the first 5 months, they reduced 34.6% of the death rate dedicated to the opioids. Wow. What an answer. But at the same time, I don't really agree with the methodology. The results are fantastic. It doesn't solve all the problem, but they're saving lives. But as I polarize into my self-feelings, I'm more inclined to say, I still think that there are other approaches that we can take to achieve similar results. And my friends, in that perspective is what I'm talking about, where our own self-beliefs as providers can restrict access to services that any one unique individual may require. And we know that addiction hides from no one. We as providers wake up every day full of pride and passion to get out in the community full of confidence, boasting with courage, to get into place to serve others and to save lives. And the value of any one given life is worth saving. And if that is the case, then why would we allow our self-belief systems get in the way? So the argument here is more of a challenge to self-perspective. Do we have self-beliefs that are complicating the further expansion of access to treatment services? Do our self-belief systems restrain helping solve the ever-growing problem of drug use? Harm reduction is one of those things that, for providers, can be, right? Like, it can be a little tough because everything, like on a spectrum, all the treatment services that are offered, every level of care, every aspect of harm reduction, anything that anybody could ever do, from I go around and give out free hugs to even extreme methodologies like we just saw with the overdose prevention clinic. Everybody and their moral ethics and their treatment services fall somewhere in between that spectrum. But every service falls within that spectrum. But I think a point of perspective here is that where we fall from less severe, what we think is just everyday treatment services along the spectrum, where that point sits and everything behind it that we're okay with is just treatment services. But everything else gets bundled into that stigma bucket of harm reduction. And if we focus on the outcomes and the whys, and we understand that walk-in clinic reduced the death rate by 34% in the first 5 months. The first 5 months. It's extremely successful. But how likely are you to send one of your patients that you know is struggling with relapsing after your programs and know that they're going back into use? Hey, while you're still in use, please use this type of service. How willing are you to refer somebody to that? The focus into patient safety, instead of weighing the value of our treatment services, putting patient safety first, is the perspective that helps us mitigate our own self-belief, our struggles with our self-beliefs restricting access. And I'm going to get into that here in a minute. But I like to think of, when we talk about how we all disagree as providers across treatment methodologies, typically in this talk, in this segment, I bundle the group up, the groups of individuals in the forum, and we do a workshop together. And I put up 2 patient cases. And I ask providers to get together to come up with a treatment plan for an individual. Patient 1 would be an individual that is wanting to stop and is suffering from utilizing methamphetamines and crack cocaine. He's homeless, has no money. Make a treatment plan for him. And what you'll find from the groups that get together, there are inner conflicts about how people would go about helping that individual because they see differently. And then the next person, the next set of group of providers that we would group together, I would ask them to put a treatment plan in for somebody needing to detox from alcohol that is currently on Suboxone. And you would be shocked from your inner group how different of a treatment plan you guys would require that person to go through. Right? But since how we have such a large group today, I don't think we have the ability to get into that. But we polarize ourselves. And sometimes what we see is radical because it's not traditional. One of my hospitals went through what they self-proclaimed as an identity crisis. One of our hospitals was historically an abstinence-based addiction program. And when it started taking on medicated assisted treatment programs, there was a lot of struggle with our treatment teams and our physicians. We had to have a lot of conversations about outcomes and the whys we're doing it. It was radical. Our programming, we know for a fact that our programming works and we are successful, right? I'll give you an example that we all can better relate to. I was born in the mid-'80s, okay? So I'm approaching around 40. So if you're around my age, you're going to get this a little differently than people who are 55 and older. In the 90s, there was a harm reduction program that was rolled out called CAPS. And CAPS was a free condom distribution program where free condoms were being distributed through the health departments in the schools. Does anybody remember this? Right? And what was the feedback from the communities regarding this program? Anybody?
Encouraging them to have sex.
Encouraging people to have sex. What else? So what I heard was all my parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles and teachers say, that's a terrible program because they are encouraging teenage sex, underage sex. And on the traditional side here, I want to preach abstinence. You will abstain from having sex, son, right? But on this other side, the program states that teenagers have hormones. And they're going to have sexual encounters. And when they do, we can give them a method to be safer when they engage in those risky behaviors. The aim of the program, as radical as it is, was to reduce the contraction rate of sexually transmitted diseases, such as AIDS. And another big one was to reduce the teenage pregnancy rates. And they are very plausible. So on this side, which is radicalized, we have very good initiatives. We have very strong scientific expectations of reducing risk in these behaviors. But on the other side, traditional is, please abstain. But what both sides of this radical and traditional aspect start coming into toward the center, toward each other, where we start getting closer to collide, is when we start identifying this is beneficial for the safety of the individual who is partaking in it. So what that conversation would look like, kids don't have sex, but I know that you're going to. So I get one step closer. And when you do it, please do what you can and be sure not to get pregnant. And now I'm halfway on this scale to the radical side of their objectives. And it results in patient safety. When we meet in the middle of understandings of things that we may be stigmatized relating to harm reduction, if we seek to understand the reasons why and the anticipated outcomes, we can further meet in the middle. Again, the argument from the perspective of harm reduction that I want us to focus on is as we increase treatment services, as we expand what we're willing to do to help people in any stage of their recovery or their addiction. No, they do not get any closer to abstinence or abstaining from the risky behaviors. But the goal is to marginally improve the safety of the individual. Does that make sense? And so if we turn our focus, like we all agree, the value of any one life is worth saving, irregardless of what it takes. If we put our focus to the safety of that individual, we have to remove what we currently may want. I want you to get you to abstinence right now. But they may not be able to partake into a program that's 30, 60, 90 days right away. They may not be able to afford it. They may not be able to pull away from their job. So we have to come up with different approaches. So if we keep our focus on individual safety and improving their overall well-being, not just to our goals, our end goal objective of, I want you to be done with this risky behavior now, right? I want to help you get there. And I believe, for me, that helps me reframe my perception when I come into conflicts like I had with the overdose prevention clinics. Don't agree with it. Don't necessarily understand it, but I get the outcomes. And is it the end resolve that I'm hoping is achieved for those individuals? No. No. But it's giving those individuals another chance to hear words of encouragement, support, and a breath of life for the next day for when they are ready to enter treatment services. There are people already in place to go and help. So reframing our perceptions can really help us identify there are aspects of how we structure our expectations and our guidance and our counseling to be restrictive or expansive. I think you guys all know and understand harm reduction pretty well, and it can be any subset of strategies. The biggest thing here is harm reduction, like we said, focuses more on improving the overall well-being of the person. It focuses first on the safety of the individual. And to do so, we have to expand treatment services first. Rather than to push to abstinence and disregarding the risky behaviors that they're engaging in, we first look at the individual. It's a simple practicality, but we get caught up in what we know, right? And we overlook it. So again, on this polarizing spectrum, we struggle with this. I know a provider, this is a good example here when we talk about polarizing and our perceptions. There's a provider that I know down here in the Southeast, a very successful provider. And when I say successful provider, they have very high volumes of patients with incredible clinical outcomes, with exceptional patient reviews. But this provider has a rule. And the provider's rule is he or she will not write a prescription for Suboxone until the patient fails the program twice. And failing the program twice, my friends, is a second relapse. Now, some of us here on the polarizing side, right? We agree with them. Good for you, because we know that the patient can do it. The programming is enough. If the patient works hard, they can do it. But the other side of our polarization questions, why would you ever put that person's life at risk by not? Fair? You guys see how polarizing these topics can be in these situations? And they're every day. To defend the provider and the stance, she has an excellent program. And the provider every day fights for her patients and believes in the program that he or she provides, that if the patient plays full out in it, participates and works really hard, they can and will achieve abstinence. But from that scenario, it's the provider's choice what they get, not what accommodation of what they need. They have to play by the provider's rules, not to the circumstances or the needs of the individual. And that's a conflict. The big theme here is that harm reduction recognizes that every individual has a unique set of needs. And it puts patient safety first. Not everybody has the chance to make a choice today and be done with their addiction. But the access of most of our services begin and end with, when you're ready, I'm here. Right? I had a friend call me on December 23rd, 2022. I hadn't heard from him in about 5 or 6 years. And I never knew that he was a suffering alcoholic. He called me basically explaining that his wife and his kids had left. He's got nowhere to go for Christmas. Saw that I had moved back into Mississippi. I welcomed him into my home. And the guy came, he had his duffel bag. He came in an Uber because he was loaded. And in his duffel bag, he had a change of underwear, and the rest of it was bottles of liquor. He didn't know what I did for a living. Which I didn't lead with that. But as we caught up, naturally he asked, well, what is it that you're doing these days? I'm like, well, I'm in behavioral health. Oh. Cooked dinner that night. I didn't ask him to stop. And I've got little kids, right? It's scary to bring somebody in that's in that moment where they're not safe into your home. We started talking about what it is that I do and what has been going on in his world and how he's struggling. He's losing his medical license. His wife has filed for a divorce. He parked his car on the side of the highway a couple of weeks ago. That's why he came in an Uber. Things weren't going well. And instead of saying, man, hey, can I help you get into one of my treatment programs? Are you ready for it? I could tell he wasn't ready. And the next morning, instead of staying through Christmas, he called for an Uber to come all the way back to pick him up from 90 miles away. And before he was leaving, the Uber came up. I just went up and hugged him. I said, just minimize your mistakes. Whatever you do, don't do anything that's going to hurt yourself or others. Minimize your mistakes. And when you are ready, you can call me and I can help get people lined up to help you for whatever that you need. But for right now, please don't do anything to hurt yourself or others. Focus on minimizing your mistakes. And my friends, that's a hard thing to do as a friend, as being a part of the behavioral network. Because all I want to do is, I can help you right now, brother. Man, I know some people that will help you in all aspects of your problems right now. Can I talk to you about how important it is that you go now? Because you may not have it tomorrow. And I can give that sermon to them. But if somebody's not ready today, or they have a certain circumstances, we know that they're going to continue on what they're doing. And the best thing that we can do at times is find some kind of way to support and encourage them to promote at least a little increase of safety for them. Right? How are we doing on time? It's about time to wrap up. So as we expand the services that we offer to better accommodate our focuses on increasing their ability to keep people more safe while they are engaging in risky behaviors. People are going to continue to jump out of planes with parachutes. You can't stop them. People are going to continue to jump off of bridges with bungee cords. Can't stop them. People are still going to drink before they go to sleep, thinking that's the only way that they can sleep well. People are going to continue to rely on substances to cope with their mental health conditions. People are going to continue to engage in risky behaviors for a multitude of reasons. And when our focuses come into, I can get you to a point where you're stopping now, it's not accommodating enough for everything in the part of the journey that they may need to go. And I'm going to blow through patient-centered care pretty quick because there's only one slide that I want to put up here because we're talking about self-perspective. And I love this infographic because the journey to recovery for any one individual is probably not going to be the same one for you. And what you need may be different than what you need. But as you know what your needs are, you go out and talk with all these providers, you may not even find it. And so you have to start piecemealing what you're willing to do, right? And so instead of going into a residential program, you may seek somebody willing to help you on a low level like IOP type of level, just because you only have time for that. People, let's say like me, let's say if I was needing to go into a residential rehab program. I am a proud husband, father of 3 kids. None of my kids are even older than 4.5 years old. It's pretty hectic in my house. I'm the lone income resource for my household. My job, I help serve teams representing 4 hospitals across 4 and 5 states. I help disposition people in and out of treatment services all over the place. I can't unplug for 90 days. I lose too much. And so I have to look for different options for my needs because I can't let my life down. Too many people are relying on me. But that's not fair to me, though, is it? So that's the need for the expanded services. There's a wonderful lady on the coast who works for people engaged in recovery. Have you ever heard of that peer support group out of Mobile? People engaged in recovery. And one of the peers out of there calls me all the time, and I love the way that she cues up how she helps people. So I'll get a phone call from her, like, ring, hey, Kyle, I got somebody. I don't know if you can help me, but I know exactly what they need. Great, what you got? How can I help? This guy, I've been helping him for the past 2 or 3 years. He's relapsed on alcohol 4 times. I need you to put him in, detox him, put him in residential services, get him ready to come back here to our outpatient program. But before you send him back here, pop him real good with Vivitrol. This time we're going to get him. I know exactly what that guy needs. And so I go through my head, it's like, okay, I got detox, I got residential. Who do I know is going to pop him with Vivitrol? Will he stay long enough for 14, 15 days? All the criteria that it takes to cope with that demand. But this provider, because she knows exactly what this patient needs, that person, she's representing where that person's going to end up going because she's got his trust. She's going to wait till she finds somebody to say, yes, I'm going to give him that treatment plan. Right? We can complicate it. So what's your way? What's my way? What's the way of the patient's way as they're figuring this out, as they call you for your counsel and seeking your advice? Should I come to your program or to somebody else's? How many different paths to recovery are there? And how many left turns should have been right turns? How many turns could have been avoided if it wasn't for whoever was involved in their self-belief systems affecting their guidance? There's a lot of whys in that statement. But the reality is there's no one way. And this is why I say if we continue to focus on, first and foremost, what can we do right now to ensure that we're improving the safety of an individual as we help guide them along that path to abstinence? That path to abstinence may be 60 days. Great. Are you okay with if it's 30 years? The end result and the end goal is the same. But if we prioritize the safety of the individual and their unique set of circumstances, it's not about the timeline. It's about what does that person need today. So as we reframe our perceptions, as we reflect on our own belief systems, the next time you come across a program like overdose prevention clinics or something radical in your terms, I hope that this talk has been a refresher and an encouragement for you to step outside of yourself to seek the understandings of, well, why are they doing it? What are the outcomes that we can expect with this? So that when treatment services have a chance to expand and open up more access for more unique life circumstances and patient needs, we don't neglect them, but yet we support. Because, my friends, addiction hides from no one. It's all around us. And the value of any one single life is worth saving. So why would we allow ourselves to get in the way to do everything that we possibly can? And those moments that we shared that I had of that zero death dilemma is the dilemma of the contrast of our self-beliefs in the treatment service, in the contrast of, in the juxtaposition where our self-beliefs cut off the expansion of treatment methods. Thank you, guys.